Alright, today we're going to be doing another cutting and keying video. I'm going to show you some additional tips and tricks too. This one comes by request of Josh. So if you do have a request for any videos you want to see, definitely let me know and I can work on making that happen. So this was a custom pose that Josh is putting together based on Alvin Kamara here. And he just wanted to see kind of how I do, cutting and keying. We got different gaps and stuff like that. So I'm going to work on cutting and keying this model. I also said I would go ahead and add this undershirt to the model. So that might be something you want to see, as well as I'll do the custom thigh pads here because I've actually already created these custom thigh pads when I made a Christian McCaffrey. So we're going to be adding those too. So first things first, I already brought in all the parts here. Usually what I like to do first is, go to my front view and then make sure that I'm actually seeing the front. And it is already down on the grid, which is nice, but I'm going to go ahead and turn this model around. So it's actually, when I have the front view set, I'm actually looking at the front. Okay, so that's better. All right, so whenever I get like a model from somebody else, I just kind of want to see first, kind of what we're dealing with, how this is sort of put together, and then figure out what needs to be done here. So I'm sort of taking a look at the way the legs were set up here. Okay, I can tell these. So this model's been pre-hollowed. Yeah, this has all been pre-hollowed. Looks like both, and that's fine. If you know the exact scale that you're going to be doing the figure at, and this is the thickness that you like. But let's say I want to do this as an 18-inch or a 12-inch figure. Well, now these walls are too thick. So, I still, for most situations, I do prefer using my slicing tool for hollowing my models. So I think first things first, I'm going to go and I'm going to unhollow this model. So I think a lot of people have wanted to see kind of how to do that. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, we got a weird hole there too. All right, all sorts of fun stuff going on with this model. Yeah, we got stuff sticking out there. Just gonna hide my grid for a second there. All right, so we're gonna work on, I guess, just cleaning up these parts first, and then we'll actually get to it. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna cut the top off here. So I'll use plain cut for that. All right, get a little better view to see, the hollowing there. Now we gotta fix this down here. So I'm gonna take my selection tool. I'm just gonna go around here. All right, let's see. Was that enough to sort of separate the outer shell and the inner shell? That thing's kind of screwing it up. Okay, yeah, there we go. So now I just got the inner shell selected, so I can delete that. Perfect. Looks like that. There. All right. So I filled that, and now we're just gonna fill the bottom. And there we go. Okay, so back to a solid piece, which I like. All right, Let's work on fixing this one. Got a weird little gap there. We're just gonna go ahead and select there. Oh yeah. Okay. So I gotta do the same thing underneath. I put a little circle here. We needed to fill this anyways. We did not need a hole in this leg. So I'm just gonna make a little selection right around the edge here. Delete that. So that should separate that inner shell from the outer shell. Double click the inner shell and delete. Perfect. Yeah, I've got a weird floater there. We'll get rid of that. So double click around the hole. And if you hit Command and scroll wheel, you can increase or decrease your selection. Not sure if you do that. Then hit F to fill that and accept. And then we'll do the same up here. Again, we got a little hanger there, but F to fill. So we know we have some floating pieces in there. We'll run analysis real quick and inspector. There they are. And auto repair. Get rid of those. Okay. All right. Solid and solid. Let's get rid of those. Hide those. Go to the pants. All right. We're going to do the same thing. So we got to separate the inner and outer shell. So we're going to go make a selection around here. And delete. Same around here. Yeah, it's not a very dense mesh, which is fine. And do the same up here. Now I can select that inner shell, delete. Oops, just want the edge. Fill. And fill. Oops. And let's fill this one. Had some floaters, so let's go ahead and delete those. Okay. And I don't like this peg either. We're going to be getting rid of this. So I'm just going to, instead of plain cutting, I'm going to go around it this way. And delete. Select this top piece, delete, and then I'm going to fill that. Okay. Now we got a nice, okay, solid pant. Looks like there was some sort of transform that happened in here. Got a little messy. This is fairly low poly. It's just gonna make it sculpting in there a little bit harder. So I'm gonna add some in that area so I can refine that a little bit. And because I'm gonna be redoing the thigh pads, we're gonna need some more mesh in there. Now I could just go and remesh the whole pant, but it's gonna increase the file size. It's going to can take a little while too. And if these are really the only areas that I need higher poly, sometimes I just like to go through with the brush here and add the mesh that way because it is a little faster. And I always go a little bit further out than I actually need to. Okay. So I'm going to go, as long as I'm here, I'm just going to take the smooth brush and kind of come in here and smooth out that. There's a little bit of weirdness happening there. I wonder if there was different thigh pads on this at one point, and we're just seeing a little bit of that old thigh pad. Now, here's where you gotta be careful when sculpting between two different mesh densities. You can get kind of an obvious line there, so you just have to watch that. Yeah, I think there used to be, I don't know, different set of thigh pads on here. And you're just kind of seeing the remnants of the old. I might have to come back in and, oops, there we go. Add some more around there. All right, so that's a little bit. It's, okay, a little cleaner now. Yeah, looks like there was some sort of. Sometimes you get those weird artifacts if you've done like a transform and sort of moved. Try to move the leg with a transform tool. Sometimes as it pulls, you'll get some of that. Okay, so we'll call these done, and we'll switch over to the torso. Same. Okay, so this is not hollow. This is just a scan. So you've seen my videos before. You know, I like these gaps filled. So kind of the same technique I used before. I'm just gonna go around here and delete that, and then I can delete this piece, and then I'm gonna just do a fill across there, and this one I don't want the smooth MVC. I would do the flat remeshed. It's thinking, of course. Anytime you have a sort of a large gap like this, it takes a little longer to process. I'll change that to flat remeshed. Okay. Accept. Clear. All right. I love these little key marks, L and R, that are on the model. That, you know, things that you would never see, you know, unless you were if you were actually taking these figures apart, you know. So it's like really only a customizer is ever gonna see marks like that. Kind of reminds me too of the original McFarlane bases, the rectangular ones. If you tore the green shell, sort of, if you tore that off of the black base, oftentimes you would find almost like little messages written with the adhesive that holds them together. I remember on a number of occasions sort of taking those apart and finding look like Chinese characters written with adhesive underneath there. Don't know what they said or if they meant anything, but it was just kind of interesting. Again, sort of like the things you find as a customizer that just a normal collector is never going to see. All right, so I'm going to do the head or the neck area here too. All right, and this is just going to make things, when I get to the fitting process, the keying process, it just makes it a whole lot easier. And, you know, usually once once I go through this process here of like closing up this scan, generally I resave it back to my files, so I don't have to do this again. I'm guessing this looks to me like the Reggie Bush torso is my guess as to which scan this is. But all right, so now we got the torso done. I think the arms were fine. these aren't hollow. All of our parts are kind of to where I like them. All right. You know, Josh said he left me a little gap there. Don't know if I really need that though. And okay, when we plane cut, we got a gap there, and okay, this should all be fine. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just bring this down a little bit. All right, close enough. All right. And now we need to add that undershirt. It's not a really big undershirt. So this is my technique for that. Just gonna go ahead and I want to hide these, get them out of the way. All right. Well, we want to start with the closest shape to that undershirt, which is a cylinder, believe it or not. So I'm gonna pull in a cylinder here. And need to make this a lot bigger. Let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna hide the torso too. And we're gonna hide the head. All right, and then we're just going to put this right here. And we want it to be sort of roughly the shape here of his waist, and you know, just a little bit bigger. So we're gonna come out a little bit wider and come this way here, bring it down a little bit. Don't need it that tall. And we kind of see, all right, maybe angle it a little bit here. There we go. It just has to be rough. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. I'm going to do the rest of that work in Blender. Now, I do need a lot more. I need a denser mesh on this, so I'm going to select it and then remesh. And we got to keep going. We want more. Because I want to add in some folds and stuff like that. I'm going to be using some texture brushes. Yeah, that's good. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth this out as well. And hit accept. All right. All right, now I'm going to start doing some additional work in Blender. So we need to export out all these pieces, even ones I did. So I didn't change the head. Okay, I did change the location. So I'm going to have to resave that so it remembers the new location. I'm just going to go right down. Come on, left arm. Okay, now this piece we should right away is rename this to Undershirt. And go ahead and export that out. All right, now we're going to reopen all these pieces in Blender. Remember, if you're working in Blender, you need to go import and actually indicate what file type you're importing. In this case, we're working in STLs. Right there, import. All right, and the first thing I always do, with everything still selected, I right click and I set the origin to center of mass. All right, so there's our mark. I'm going to change this to sculpting mode up here. So it changes your camera view, which I don't necessarily like, but all right. And bring this down up a little bit here. All right, so we're going to work on this undershirt first. So I'm going to hide the arms, they're kind of in the way. And I don't need the head right now either. So I have to switch over here to object mode so I can actually select the object I'm going to be sculpting. All right, so I've got the undershirt selected. Now I can go into sculpt mode. So I'm just sculpting on the undershirt. This is my favorite brush, the grab brush. And I can use the bracket keys to change the radius. Otherwise you do it up here with the slider or here adjusting the strength. But you can use the grab tool, and I'm gonna be now pushing this in here. So what I want to do is I want to get the top portion basically tucked under the jersey, and then the bottom portion we just want to get as close to the pant as we can. And just like that, we're starting to get a exposed undershirt. This is definitely one of those things that when I first got into 3D, something like this undershirt is definitely something I would have done after the fact, like with epoxy sculpt, until kind of found this brush and how it works. And this has really helped me replace a lot of things that I would have done with epoxy sculpt. So and I do have to kind of keep changing the camera angle as I work around, and then changing the size of the brush too. But we just want to make sure it looks like it's, you know, under the jersey, but over the pant. All right, and that's looking pretty good on top. Now that's, you know, way too thick right now, so we'll start to push this in. And even as you start to pull this in like so, you're starting to even get what looks like folds even. And I kind of use this. I use the same technique if I'm making towels. Anyway, just want to make sure it doesn't look, you know, too thick. This is just an undershirt, but so it should be right. And I'll continue to kind of push it in until I see the pant, and then, you know, just bring it back out a little bit. Okay, I'll go back to object mode. I'm gonna hide that. That sticks out so far. So since it's gonna be covered up by the undershirt anyways, I'm gonna hide it. So I'm just gonna take the smooth brush, and I'm just gonna kind of smooth out that area because we don't really see it anyways. And back into object mode. Turn back on the undershirt. Okay. That's looking pretty good. So it does come up a little bit higher over here. So go back to that grab brush and I'll pull this up. We could even make it, you know, flare out like it does over here. Just gotta bring it up here. I don't know. We don't know how far it goes out in the back, but I'm guessing since it's not that far out here, it probably starts to work its way back in. So all right, that looks pretty good. Got some, that looks kind of unnatural right there, so I'll take the smooth brush and I'll come back and I'm just going to smooth that out. And that needs to pull out just a little bit more. Okay, all right, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So I want to add some fold and wrinkle details to that. So this I have not demonstrated before. So on the drive, I did put a bunch of blender brushes on there, which similar to Meshmixer stencils, but with a lot more freedom, a lot easier to use. So you have to go File and then Append. You need to go to your blender brushes folder. Think it's in, I know I've got a lot of different brush types here. I think the ones I want to use are in this Close Wizard blender. So I select that, hit Append. Did that wrong. Double click. Then the blend file is what you want to append. Then you go to the brush, and now you need to find. You're gonna see there's gonna be a lot. There's a lot of brushes in here, and a lot of them you don't need. And unfortunately, you don't get a preview either. I just happen to know what some of them are, but there's some stitch brushes as well. Tension folds, and okay, here's the rest of the wrinkles. All right, and then hit Append again. All right, so now they should, yes, be in here. So, all right, in order to use the blender brushes, you have to be on the Draw Sculpting tool. You'd have to be in the Sculpting tab as well. You can sculpt while in Layout, but you won't be able to use these brushes. You have to be in the Sculpting tab. Have to be using the Draw brush, and then you need to go into this tool, the Active Tool and Workspace settings here, and over to Brushes, and then you click on the thumbnail, and now you can see. Now you get a preview. But now here's all the different brushes that I added. So let's see. Let's start with, I use this one a lot. I like this one. Wrinkle 3. And so what you do is you click and drag, and you can also rotate. And then you unclick, and now it stays there. And so you can sort of use combinations of these. See that? Yep. So it's just click and drag, and like I said, you can rotate them around too. You can play with the strength too. So if you don't want it to be as pronounced, and kind of layer them right over each other too. You want to be careful not to use, you know, the same brush in the same orientation with the same strength, sort of, you know, over and over. Otherwise it becomes a little bit obvious that it's a brush and it's the same brush. There. And I just hit escape to get out of oh, okay, so then see, add it right onto there. Bring the strength down a little bit. Oh. Nope. Yeah, sometimes, you know, it looks good in the thumbnail and you go to start to use it. It's like, not feeling it. That was not too bad. Let's see. So this has definitely become one of my favorite tools, and why I really like using Blender. As if you've used Meshmixer stencils before, you can see just how much easier this is. Sort of how much more control you have than with the stencils. And I do like the stencils, and there's definitely a time when you want to use those. Man, but for folds and wrinkles, especially getting them to look natural, this is so much better. So, I mean, pretty nice. We went from, you know, a cylinder, you know, to this undershirt now with just a few different with just really two brushes. We used the grab brush, and then we used the draw brush with those wrinkle brushes added. So just got to do a little bit more adjustment now, but dang, see, that looks pretty good. Oops. All right, so now make sure when you're done, you do have to go back into object mode, and that sort of sets everything. So like all the sculpting work you did is now like it's applied. All right, so now while we're in here, we have a few more things to do before we can actually get to keying. We got this gap here now between the upper leg and lower leg. So that's where the grab brush, again, very handy. I can start to just sort of pull the leg back up, and I want them to, you know, overlap. Like that. I'm gonna hide the pant. Okay, so that looks good. Make sure we go back into object mode. Yep, now you can see it is extended past, which is what I wanted. This one is probably fine. We want to do the same thing for the arm, so we'll start with the right arm. All right, the right arm is extending in, which is good. That's what we wanted. This is where too, if the sleeve wasn't looking natural, like it's coming over the arm, we could use the grab brush to kind of pull the sleeve and tighten up that space around the arm, but that looks pretty good. The same thing for the left arm. Okay, already has good spacing sort of around, and I can tell from sort of the x-ray view that this is going into the torso, which is what we want, so that looks good. And then lastly, I'll take a look at the head. You know, the neck looks a little long, especially looking at him there. So this could probably come down a little bit further. And then once you have the head, so I like to get the helmet on there, the chin strap, and get this all in here because I like to see, you know, how close is that chin strap actually like getting to the shoulder pad, and then I can make some adjustments. So if, you know, if I need to kind of move the I could use the, you know, that grab brush, you know, to just gently nudge, you know, the shoulder pad down, you know, if I need to make room for the chin strap, if things are getting a little tight. But, and again, I would, okay, so we got, if I start to pull here, you see there, yeah, some of that opening was covered up. So another nice part of the, this grab brush is adjusting sort of the neck opening to make it fit the neck better. You don't want, you know, because you don't want it too big. It doesn't look natural. But you want to make sure that you got enough room for it to fit in there. All right, so that looks good. You know, I'm gonna bring that neck down a little bit. So when moving things in Blender is a little bit different. You got to hit G for grab, and then you can kind of move it down and around. And then it's R for rotate. Okay, that looks slightly better. But that's just my opinion. This is Josh's figure. I'm going to be kicking it back to him. If he wants to make further changes, he can. All right. Okay, so now I need to go back. Now, because I've made changes to all these pieces, I do need to go and resave these, re-export them out. So we'll just kind of start here and we'll work our way down. Now, so same thing. I can do export. I have to tell it what file type I want. We're going to export these out as STLs as well. Now, here's the thing you always got to remember when you're working in Blender is by default, this is unselected, this selection only. Now I've selected the head and I'm exporting the head. However, because this is unselected, when I hit export, it's going to export every part and then name it Kamara head. But I only want the head to be exported, or, you know, only the part I have selected. So I do have to remember to select that. Now let's keep repeating and go right down the line. Okay, so that was the last part. So usually, you know, what I'll do too is I'll go ahead and I will leave this open and just minimize it in case I do want to come back to it. So pretty big change here. So if I go import and import this new undershirt, you know, pretty crazy that, you know, we went from this, you know, to that, you know, just with a few brushes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of these and import everything else again. You want to select no here. Already looking much better. All right, that looks good. All right, so I'm gonna hide that, hide that, hide that. Okay. I do want these to be one part though. So I'm going to Boolean union. Good, no errors. I'm gonna uncheck auto reduce result. and change precise to max quality. There we go. Oh. So let's rename that Kamara Torso. All right. So now we have sort of all the pieces where I want them. We could start cutting and keying. I did say I would add Kamara's custom thigh pads there. So first thing I do is I'm gonna hide all these other pieces. Meshmixer does not always run the best on my Mac, but I did find that, you know, hiding objects, you have a lot of objects in your file, hiding the ones they're not using does kind of help speed things up a little bit. All right, removing thigh pads, that's always fun. Let's go this method. We're just gonna put a selection around it. Let's select that whole area. And then we're gonna do the erase and fill, which is F. And sticking out a little bit. Sometimes you can play with the scale tool. Yeah. That's not too bad. There we go. And then we can clean that up with the smooth brush. It looks like we lost the knee pad, so I think we may have to go and add knee pads to this as well. All right. Let's edit, erase and fill, or you just hit the F key. Bring the scale down. That's fine. And clean it up with the sculpt brush. All right, we're gonna have to add some more detail around the knee pads so that we can add those back in. Now I'm just kind of regretting just not doing a overall remesh of the entire lower, because all right, now we can go in and add those thigh pads. This area is bugging me. All right. So the other thing, you know, we just worked with some blender brushes. Now we're going back to stencils. You know, one thing, you know, with the stencils, you got to be, you know, you got to be straight on in order for these to work. Nope. That's not what I wanted. All right. All right. This one goes on this leg. Thank God for the undo button. There we go. And this one goes here. Now that one I applied twice. I think I like that thickness better. It's hard to tell exactly how far it's sticking up there, but I think this one doesn't stick up as far as this one. So let's go with the double. So I'm gonna have to undo all that. Okay, we're right back to where we started with the right leg. All right, so I do have flow turned on, which already kind of adds a little bit extra when I click, but I'm gonna have to just double tap. There we go. Good. And let's do the other side. And double tap. You just gotta be careful when you apply that double tap that you don't move the cursor at all, where it starts to get offset. And I do like to clean up those edges so it's not quite as sharp. So I go click that back so we can go back to smooth, bring the, yep, too much strength. Just want to smooth it out just a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, let's try something different over here though, just to see what happens. What if we select this whole area? Alright, and then go deform and smooth. Do I like how that looks better? That's actually not too bad. That might even look more natural than this does. Yeah, I think this is better. You know, this is why, you know, just because it's the way you've always done something doesn't mean it's the best way or the right way. So I have to keep undo all this smoothing that I did over here. Let's select these. Now, deform, smooth. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's bring it up a little bit. Yeah, I really like how that looks. I think that's a lot closer to these. And accept. Yeah, you're welcome, Josh. That looks, I like that. That looks really good. All right. And then what do we got for knee pads? Yeah, these are just your basic oval knee pads. So you don't need a brush or anything to do these. Just your selection brush. Okay. And then let's see, we go edit, extrude. Yeah, I can't remember. Oh yeah, we want constant. All right. Just right about there. And hit accept. And now with that selection there, I'm going to hold down the command key on my Mac and scroll. I want to continue that selection down and around. Okay, so I want to go beyond the pad with the selection. All right, and then the same thing I did on the thigh pads, we're going to go smooth and start to smooth out these edges here. Look at that. That's pretty good. Accept. Clear. Maybe those, they might be maybe a little bit bigger than we wanted. But we'll come in with the smooth brush and just taper them out just a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add some of this stitch detail here around the thigh pad and around the knee pad, and we'll go and we'll add these some of these wrinkles here on the side, and we need to re-export this out. Okay, I'm gonna go into Blender here. I'm gonna bring back in these pants. Set origin to center of mass. All right, let's start by adding some of those wrinkles there to the side. So we have to go append. Go where you find your blender brushes. All right, and so we're gonna add. I have to bring it. This is a new file, so I got to bring in the wrinkle brushes again. So hit append. Go to the brushes, and we want, what do we want? Bring in some of those single, do like the tension brushes, and some of these wrinkles here. All right, and append. Make sure you're in sculpting. You're in the sculpting tab up here, which does change your camera view. Come back in. All right, with the draw brush selected. Very important that the draw brush is selected. Otherwise, that's the only brush that works with the blender brushes. All right. Let's see. What do I want to use on the knee pads? Let's go with. That one looks good. Again, I just have to click and pull. That looks nice. Maybe I'd layer. Nope, that's enough. Maybe I could add another single one in there. Remember, it's just click, drag, and pull, and you can rotate and scale. And then maybe I come back with the smooth brush. That was a little too much. Bring the strength down. Just smooth it out so it's not as harsh. And it's going to be, because it'll be extra tight where the knee pad is, we don't want a fold there. So got to feather that back. That looks good. We need some over here. Maybe we try, this one's got a little bit more. We'll see. Yeah, I kind of like how that looks. I might want it down a little bit more, so maybe I start it here. Nope, maybe start it right there. That looks good. All right, I'm gonna smooth it out just a little bit. And I think we're going to fix this too, because we have, you can see, you know, there were wrinkles here which got lost, smoothed out. So kind of looks a little unnatural to have these wrinkles here and then they disappear. So let's add some back in. Maybe try this one. That's not bad, but it's a little, bring the strength down. That's not too bad. We'll just smooth that out. There we go. And I don't want them going over the top of the knee pad because it would be tight there, so we shouldn't see that. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Want them a little bit more subtle. There we go. All right, so now we want to add the stitches around around here. So we're gonna need some stitch brushes. So we're gonna go penned, go into our blender brushes, and start with this file here. Oh my gosh, we have 25 stitch brushes here, append. Oh, make sure you're on, gotta be on the brush tool in order to see. There we go, so we got lots of stitch brushes here. Oh my gosh, okay. Now, which one can we, I don't know if we can get into this photo enough to see the stitch, actually what it looks like, but I usually use something like this or this for these kind of details. Oh, this one's pretty good. Let's go with this one. All right, sort of this. I don't know if I can make that bigger, but all right. So using a stitch brush, we have to draw. So this is a little bit different than the wrinkle brush where you can like click and pull and rotate and scale. There's a few settings that are important when using this type of brush. So I do like to put a little bit of smoothing on. You're going to want to change your radius unit to scene instead of view. This way, if you're zooming in and out and rotating around, it's going to maintain sort of like the size of the brush no matter if you're zoomed in or zoomed out. And then I want to make sure that like the stitches over here end up matching the same size over here, so I set that to scene. What else we have in here? Stroke. Space is generally what you use. So anchored is what we were using on those wrinkles, where it starts from a central point and it pulls out and you can scale and rotate. Space is what's going to allow us to draw on the brush. So I do want that. That should be set to scene. I do have stabilize stroke on, and you'll kind of see what that does. So if I start to drag, see how I get this purple line first before it starts applying? It gives me a little bit more control. That's the one thing I hate about this brush. Sometimes you'll start to play with it and you'll be like, I don't like those settings. I'll Command Z to go back and it kicks me out of that brush altogether. And I kind of have to start over. So don't do that. Which brush was I using now? Maybe it's that one. Okay, use that one. Again, we're gonna set that to scene. Bring down the size a little bit. So to avoid that that issue of backing out and then it kicks you out of this menu where you've just already applied all your settings, sometimes what I do is I'll just kind of like draw off in space, or start to draw and then not, and then sometimes okay, there, I hit Command Z to get rid of that because I had already like started using the brush like out in space. When I hit back, I don't immediately go off this brush and lose all that, so that's good. All right, so let's start here, and I start to drag and pull, and this is where I have to kind of decide now. All right, not very pronounced. Again, it depends on how dense your mesh is. If your mesh isn't too dense, you're going to lose. You're not going to get a ton of detail. Let me Command Z. Yeah, let's go a little bit bigger. I'm gonna bring down that. Now let's Yeah, that's not... I see the mesh is not detailed enough to really pick up that fine of a... Yeah, we're not really getting a lot of detail there. So I think we're going to have to sort of make this mesh a little denser. Let's go back to object mode. Got to export this back out. Because I do want to save those wrinkles that we added. Make sure selection only. Let's go back in here. Delete. And this is why I really need to figure out how to apply sort of a denser mesh when I'm in Blender. So I don't have to keep going back and forth like this between the two applications. So we're really going to make this dense around here and see if that helps get that stitch detail to show up a little bit better. That should be better. So let's export that. Bring them into Blender here. All right. Go back into sculpt mode. Should have remembered all my settings there. Let's see how this should look better. Yes. All right. That definitely looks better. The stitches are a little bit more defined. Maybe we go a little bit smaller though. Go a little bit bigger. Oh, and we can bump that strength up too. And if we go back and look at that picture, I mean they're pretty far out from the pad, so. Now, if you're, because of that, we have that laziness turned on, so it doesn't start applying the brush as soon as you press on it. I need to start back a little bit. And so maybe in between here. Yeah, so I want to make sure those continue to line up. Why does it look like they look like they changed size on me, didn't they? And it's not supposed to change. And that is supposed to be applied by this. Let's see. Do they both have to be? We're going to set both to scene. And see if that helps. So I don't want the brush size changing as whether I zoom out or rotate. So let's try again. Hey, that lined up pretty good. All right. And it always looks a little bit more pronounced, you know, on the 3D model, but then when you go to print it, probably won't look quite as pronounced. So right. So now we got the stitch detail around the thigh pad. Looks like we have sort of same thing around the knee pad. I'm going to start right here. That looks pretty good. Back to object mode. And then let's export that back out. Alright, back to Meshmixer. And that looks really good, in my opinion. So we got added wrinkles back into the pants there, and we've got some nice stitch detail around the pads there. So I think now it's ready for cutting and keying. Let's turn everything back on here. And all right, so I'm going to use the pants to cut the legs. So I want to make some copies of this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide stuff I don't need right now, just to make sure that this is running as fast as I can have it. So I'm going to duplicate the pants twice, one for each leg. All right, hide two of them. All right, so remember whenever you're cutting, you start with the piece you want to keep, then you want to select the shift click onto the piece that you're going to use to cut. Boolean difference. Looks good. I'm going to uncheck that and change this to max quality. And then hit accept. And then I just repeat that process. Alright, I'm going to be using the torso to cut the arms and the pant. So we need a couple copies of this. I'm going to need 3 of the torso. Hit the duplicate button down here. It takes a second. And then I make 2 more after that. Okay. Hide the original. I want to make sure I keep that, and then we can hide some of these copies. And we're going to go through basically the same process we did on the legs. Just doing the arms and the pant and the head. So we'll start. Get rid of it. Okay. Start this one. Okay, so now everything is cut. Do you see you did leave an error there, so we'll clean that up with Inspector. Let's see. Oh god. Okay, so do want to fix these holes. That hole. Alright, these, so in Madden, these Madden heads, it'll delete the eye, so we're gonna leave that. Did look like, okay, there's a hole in that, looks like in a nose ring, so we can fix, nope. There is a hole there, though. Can we clean? We do want to close up that hole, though. Can't have that. There we go. That should be fine. It looked like there might have been holes in that, but we'll just leave that. Okay, so now the whole model is cut, so then all that's left is keying. So I'll just quickly walk through one and then speed run through the rest. So I like to, we'll start down here. So hide the head, hide that. Okay, so gonna pull in. I've like using rectangles for my keys. So I gotta scale it down. Just try to get it, you know, in the center. Because I see some degradation sometimes when I do the Boolean union. I do like to just remesh it and just give it a little bit more mesh. Not much, just one. All right, and then I want to name that's my peg, okay? And I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to put one right over here, so I don't have to do, you know, so that remesh again. That looks good. Okay, so I got peg and peg copy. Okay, I'm going to duplicate those. I'm going to select them both and duplicate them again. And hole and hole copy. So I have my pegs, and then I've got my holes. And I want I'll select the first hole and I'll hit T for transform. And right now I'm going to go up. It's at 5 millimeters. I'm going to go up to 5.25 and hit accept. And then the same on this one, 5.25. I want the hole just to be just a little bit bigger. So that for fitting later. All right, so I can hide those. Gonna Boolean union. Something. There we go. I don't want to auto reduce. Okay. All right, same here. Now those are good. Turn on the pants. And this will be Boolean difference. But same thing, I want max quality and uncheck auto reduce. There you go. And so now that is keyed. I would repeat the process at the arms and the waist and the head. And so I'm just going to speed run through that. All right, and now everything's been cut and keyed, and we have a completed model that's ready for print. What the hell happened here? All right, well, that is bizarre. I don't know when that happened or how that happened. That is messed up. So, other than that, we have a completed model that's ready for ready for printing. I'm gonna have to go back and figure out what happened there and fix that before I hand this off to Josh. But hope you all learned something.